You're watching the Scottish Football Zone with all the build-up and reactions.
And hello, welcome, and we're back on a very, very late Scottish Football Zone on a Monday night. And if you've just turned on your computer and the channel, no, there's not any football on tonight, but there's big, massive news. Ethan, in the past hour, Brendan Rodgers has resigned as Celtic manager, and I mean. I'm joined tonight by Ethan, but I think it was on the cards, Ethan.
Yeah, it certainly was on the cards, but I think it still comes as a massive shock, even after the result yesterday and the defeat and everything that came after that. Obviously, a lot of the Celtic fans had turned their frustration from the board towards the manager and how the players were performing, because they did fall 8 points behind Hearts. So whether their chances of winning the league have increased or decreased will be up for debate with Brendan Rodgers no longer at Celtic. But it's massive news, and I think it's only right that we came on here and discussed and everything. The statement from Dermot Desmond, Martin O'Neill and Sean Maloney taking charge in the meantime, which I think is crazy, really, to think Martin O'Neill will be back in the dugout at Celtic Park. Obviously, over 20 years on since he was last manager, and a very successful one at that. But obviously a different generation he comes into now. We'll discuss that as well. But yeah, massive news. And when somebody at a colleague at work told me about the news, I didn't believe them and had to look it up myself. So I think that tells you the surprise, and I think it's caught everyone by shock on a relatively quiet Monday night. In Scottish football terms, after the massive fallout of the weekend. 10 o'clock on a Monday night is where the talk is started, and it'll be really interesting to see how Celtic get in the next, how they deal with proceedings on Wednesday with Falkirk at home. You'd imagine that'll be an interesting atmosphere at Celtic Park. And then obviously the small matter of a massive Scottish League Cup semi-final against Rangers at Hampden on Sunday. So massive week for Celtic and a massive fallout, and I can't wait to discuss everything to do with it.
Now, I don't know where you are, even in Dumbarton, but it's certainly wind and raining here. But you would say it's windy up at Celtic Park now. But I mean, listening to that statement from Desmond, I mean, he doesn't miss any punches as well. It would be a very, very interesting press conference tomorrow that Matt O'Neill is doing. It's a bit weird to think that. I was just listening to Matt O'Neill on Talk Sport today, actually, and he must have got word this afternoon. And obviously, Sean Maloney, well, that was a no-brainer because he was at the club already. So yeah, I mean, let's talk about it because it is a big story as well. Obviously, you've got to feel sorry for Brendan Rodgers in a way, but I think he was like hung out to dry a wee bit.
Yeah, definitely, and I would completely agree with that. And I think that's what a lot of the Celtic fans are thinking at the minute. I think the saying a lot of people are using is sort of pushed before being shoved. You could use. And last time he jumped ships. I think this time he was forced to jump off the Celtic ship. And yeah, I don't think he really had a choice. And I think what it does do from a Celtic point of view is take any pressure that the fans were directing towards him and put it all back on the Celtic board. And it'll be a massive couple of games next, because as we know, Celtic can't afford to drop any more points in the league, falling 8 behind a splendid Hearts side. And of course, they will want to beat Rangers on Sunday. And I think a lot of Celtic fans wouldn't have been confident for that. And I don't know whether they'll be more confident or less confident with Martin O'Neill at the helm. I think it's really interesting that he will be in charge, because I can't remember the last full-time head coaching role he had. Was it maybe I can't remember. Was it Republic of Ireland, possibly?
It was Republic of Ireland with Roy Keane, yeah.
Yeah, and that was quite a while ago. So we ought to think that Martin O'Neill's not a Brendan Rodgers. He's not a tactical sort of, what would you say, maniac. Most of the managers of today's game. So it's going to be very different. It's going to be interesting to see how the players react in a massive pressure environment you'll feel on Wednesday. It'll be really interesting to see how the Celtic fans react and whether there is still less or more sort of abuse directed towards the board members and Dermot Desmond, obviously, after that very telling statement. And then, of course, on Sunday, it'll be a massive game with two clubs that will have been miles off it, to be honest, both of them this season, on the pitch and off it. So, yeah, it'll be bragging rights for the fans, but I think in the bigger picture, both of these clubs have got a long way to go to be where they want to be. And the league table also shows that, with Hearts obviously being so far ahead. And you spoke about Martin O'Neill. I think he was on, when he was on TalkSport this morning, he said Hearts can win the league, or he thinks Hearts will win the league, or something along those lines. So fast forward 12 hours or so, or the best part of 24 hours, and now he's the Celtic manager, tasked with narrowing that gap in the meantime before Celtic decide who their next manager is going to be. And I think the obvious one's going to be Ange Postecoglou, because obviously he's not had a great time of it recently with his role at Nottingham Forest, sacked after 8 matches, and I think it's an excellent opportunity for him. Obviously, he's shown in Scotland in the past he's a great manager, and Celtic don't seem to have a problem with going back to try and relight old flames, whether it comes to both players and managers, as we've seen with Brendan Rodgers, of course. And Celtic will hope, if they do go for Ange Postecoglou, it's a similar story of success, but maybe for a little bit longer than the last time out.
Do you think that there'll be a divide in sport now in terms of people backing Rodgers, or people kind of like backing, well, obviously the board and kind of like Dermot Desmond?
I think there will be, because people will read Dermot Desmond's statement. I'll probably mention a few of the highlights from it. Dermot Desmond goes on to thank Brendan Rodgers for his contributions to the club over both spells, and then after that pretty much cuts right through Brendan Rodgers and pretty much says that everything he's been saying or insinuating to the media, the points he's made about recruitment and lack of, and the sort of gestures of the players that he's not been using and stuff like that, and saying that he's been responsible for every player that's went in and out the doors at Celtic Park. Obviously, it doesn't seem that way. That's what Dermot Desmond's saying. And I think the thing that really hit out for me, I'll try and find it, the comment that really hit home. What has failed recently was not due to our structure or model, but to one's individual's desire for self-preservation at the expense of others. So that was one of many sort of accusations thrown towards Brendan Rodgers, and I think if people are looking for Brendan Rodgers to come out and address everything, that's never going to happen. I think he'll be given his paycheck by Dermot Desmond and for the remainder of his contract until June or July of next year, whenever that may be, and he'll go on to possibly manage elsewhere, and I think that'll be the end of it. And the Celtic fans won't really get ultimately at the bottom at who's responsible. But I think, to be honest, I don't think the Celtic fans are silly. I don't think that the wool will be pulled over their eyes. I think they're aware of what's went on at the club under Brendan Rodgers' management, but under Dermot Desmond and this board's management. And I don't think Brendan Rodgers has been the only manager that's sort of shown that Celtic maybe aren't in the place that they should be. And yeah, it'll be really interesting to see what the next steps are. Really interesting to see the atmosphere, as you said. Will there be a divide? Will there be people that feel that Brendan Rodgers should have went? Will there be people that will feel that Brendan Rodgers has sort of snaked the club again, backstabbed the side, or whether it was the right thing to do? It'll be really interesting to see that. And yeah, it's summed up a massive turning point in this title race, because I think if I maybe had Celtic as slight favourites still to win the league. Of course, Hearts 8 points clear, and I can see why people are starting to say Hearts see Hearts as favourites. Sorry, because there's no reason why they can't go and win the league. But I think after tonight, I would give them even greater of a chance.
Keep your comment coming in. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, the Scottish Football Zone. I just wanted to pick up on a point there from Mikey on Twitter, as Alex72 on Twitter says Brendan Rodgers is on English League, and Brendan Rodgers, obviously that's his opinion, but like I'm sure kind of like you've kind of heard as well that we use the word egos too much in football, and I'm hearing that well, certainly over the past couple of weeks, that Brendan Rodgers has got a big ego, and Dermot Desmond has got a big ego as well, and that's like a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that, and yeah, I would agree as Alex has joined the call to give his point of view and react to the surprise. I'm guessing Alex is surprised as the rest of us all are. I don't think many people have seen this coming, even with the Celtic fans and their frustration shown towards the manager. I don't think many of them would have expected or hoped to see him resign or be forced to resign or sacked, whatever it may be, because I think there's a lot of reading between the lines that needs to be done here, especially with some of the statements that have been released already.
Yeah, well, when me and you were at Parkhead last Thursday and sort of talking to supporters, and we were asking about Brendan Rodgers, I think sort of the overriding feeling from them was that they although they didn't agree with the comments that he made last week, that them to stay. I don't know if if I was reading into it too much, you might be able to give a different perspective on it. But for me, the majority of people that we spoke to did want him, apart from one guy who never wanted him in the first place. But the majority of people did want him to be the Celtic manager for at least the remainder of the season. And it's really shocking news, guys. I get I've come in a little bit late, but just my initial coming a bit late to the show, but just my initial reaction to it was like, what the heck is this? Is this like fake, or like you know? I had to like double check and go to Celtic officially, and yeah, it was absolutely mental. I couldn't believe it, and what Michael was saying there about egos, it could be a case. It does seem like Dermot Desmond and Brendan Rodgers both do have big egos, and it is clashed. And I wouldn't have thought that he would leave like this, and it feels, I don't know, it almost feels a bit. It goes back to that comment there saying Brendan Rodgers is only interested in Brendan Rodgers. It feels like a self-preservation thing from him, and he's, I don't know what the exact phrase is, but it's like that this is going to sound really damning, but the cunning rat always finds his way off the sinking ship, or something like that. So it feels a little bit like that. He's tried to get out before it gets even worse.
Yeah.
I'm now joined by Tino from the Celtic Exchange podcast. I know that you're a busy man tonight on this quiet Monday night. I was watching a film on Amazon, and I was just putting my feet up, smoking the pipe, and I heard the news, and I thought, well, Monday night's not really exciting, man. Let's break the news. What do you think of the reaction of Brendan Rodgers leaving Celtic, and also on the back of the point that you might have heard before you came on there, somebody made the comment about Brendan Rodgers having an ego, and Dermot Desmond having an ego as well, and I don't think that's a very good mix, Tino.
Oh, is Tino on mute?
Thank you, man.
Oh no, still can't hear him.
No, no. Giving you the big build up, Tino. But yeah.
I was just gonna.
Good.
Sorry, but yeah, Tino's here now. On you go, Tino.
Sorry about my tech issues there. I'm saying, what else would you rather be doing at 11:02 on a Monday night? So just catching up. Sorry, I'm late jumping on here, but yeah, there's egos all over the place, Michael. Just to answer that question, and I suppose eventually, when two egos go head to head, something's got to give, and it's Brendan Rodgers that's given it this moment in time. But I don't know if you lads have covered it just yet, but that statement from Dermot Desmond is very wild, isn't it?
Yeah, and I agree. I think it is two massive egos clashing, and at the end of the day, Dermot Desmond has immense power over Celtic Football Club. He's a billionaire, and ultimately, as much sort of presence Brendan Rodgers has and support amongst the fans, although a lot of fans were maybe thinking that he should leave. I think you could possibly see, I think Mike Bannerman made the point that he was deliberately sabotaging the club. I don't know if I would go as that far to say it, but you could see that there was some signs of things that he was doing that were maybe signs or sort of gestures towards the board as to, well, I'm not happy with what I've been dealt here, so deal with that. Yeah. The one that comes to mind especially is the Jemai Simpson-Pusey situation. I think he's obviously a talented player coming from Man City, played in the Champions League last season, and he can't even get a look in. And you look at how Dane Murray performed yesterday, and I don't think many people seen that coming, but
no, but the thing I feel bad. I feel bad just if we're segueing a little bit away from the main discussion. I kind of feel bad for Dane Murray because I do rate him, and I hope he kind of does well.
I would tell you something. This news has taken Dane Murray.
We like to see young Scottish players coming through, but you spoke about the comments.
Sorry, on you go.
Cut out a little bit there, mate. What were you saying?
I'm just saying Dane Murray actually probably won't mind. It's taken him right off the back pages, and it's all news about everything that's happened. So Dane Murray's probably getting a wee bit of relief actually at all of this.
Yeah, definitely. And Ethan, you mentioned the comments there. I don't know why I didn't come to this at the time of the comments to this sort of conclusion, but now after what's transpired, and it seems, and looking back on it with hindsight, it seems like he's been playing kind of like a childish sort of throwing toys at the pram kind of game for the past few weeks. And, you know, obviously you could tell he was sort of making controversial statements, but yeah, now it just seems like he's been throwing a tantrum for the past few weeks and he's not been getting his way. And that obviously there will be massive criticism on the Celtic board and the just criticism, but I think the overall way Brendan Rodgers has conducted himself and then to resign like this, I think is quite poor.
Yeah, possibly, but I do think that Brendan Rodgers, to come back to Celtic, probably had a lot of assurances that was things that maybe he didn't get and why he left the first time around that he didn't get this time. And I think Brendan Rodgers is someone who has been known in the past for sort of possibly throwing the toys at the pram, as you said. But yeah, I don't think a lot of Celtic fans are really putting most of the blame on Brendan Rodgers. I think there's still very much the blame is on the board for how they dealt with the signings, and no matter what Dermot Desmond said in his statement, I do believe a lot of the Celtic fans will not be changed on their stance, and I still feel there'll be massive discontent shown towards the Celtic hierarchy on Wednesday night, but it will be a really interesting atmosphere to see how the fans adjust to the shock, as I imagine that's what everyone in Scottish football is facing at the moment. So, as I've just seen somebody's commented, will he drive away in a Ferrari?
Tino, a good one to you after comment from Paul Donaldson on
Yeah.
YouTube. Thanks for watching, Paul. He says, after that statement from Dermot Desmond, do you think the fans will protest against the Celtic board will increase more on Wednesday night? I think the board was hoping for an away game up at Kimback 2 on Wednesday night so that more Celtic fans who can go to the game, but sadly it's a home game. So do you think there'll be more fans buying into the board now?
It's a great question from Paul. I haven't quite kind of thought it fully through, but I certainly don't think the protests are going to stop. And actually, I think what's happened in the last, whatever it is, hour or so now, is that it's brought more heat than ever before on Dermot Desmond. I think his statement is wild. I think it's a crazy statement. And I actually think there could be repercussions. It's been quite scattergun in its nature. And I wonder if Brendan Rodgers might even seek some legal advice on that. I think it's a really strong, bold statement. And actually, I think a lot of fans will now direct more anger than ever to Dermot Desmond. I just don't think... There's a statement at the end of it about looking to improve harmony across the board. This does the opposite of that. This causes chaos. And I think the fans collective and other groups might just regroup at this moment in time, take stock of the situation. Fingers crossed nothing else comes out tomorrow, but you never know. And then just work out what the next steps are. But the protests will be here to stay. Great question from Paul, but I'm not sure what kind of form they'll take in the next few weeks.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to turn into... I don't think that the game on Wednesday, Ethan, I know you're going along to the game, but I think the game will take a second nature. I think all the feelings towards the board will be on them for the whole 90 minutes.
Yeah, I think they will be, and I just to back up what Tino said, I think there was slight pressure from Celtic fans sort of drifting towards Brendan Rodgers, but obviously it's all going to be centred around the Celtic board, and Dermot Desmond's brought himself into that equation with that statement, and I don't believe that we'll hear anything from Brendan Rodgers. I think he will be given his paycheck and he'll go into pastures new, but I do believe that he has got a case but to file something, because the statement is wild, and I don't believe a lot of what Dermot Desmond has said in the statement. I fail to believe it. I don't think it's only Brendan Rodgers that we've seen Celtic managers not being supported properly. So yeah, I do think it'll be really interesting to see the fallout on Wednesday. It'll be really interesting to see, of course, how Martin O'Neill and Sean Maloney line up their team. That's a crazy statement to say in 2025. Be interested to hear what Tino thinks of that appointment over 20 years since Martin O'Neill was last in the Celtic dugout.
Do you know, I've got quite mixed thoughts on it. My general feeling is I'm okay with it because I love Martin O'Neill. I think he's great. I mean, it's an interesting one though in terms of the time, and it's been some time since he's managed at top levels, and I know that he's obviously on TalkSport down south. I think he's the chairman of the LMA, the League Managers Association, and various other things. So I think managing in the top flight was a thing of the past for him, and we'll see how temporary it is. It might only been for a couple of weeks, it might be 6 weeks or longer, who knows. So there's always one towards Martin O'Neill, so I'm okay with that. But I really don't know who's next. There's questions on whether is it, I forget his first name, but Knutson out at Bodo Glimt. He's obviously highly rated. Kieran McKenna, Ipswich has been mentioned. Damien Duff's been mentioned. I'm not sure if any of them particularly blow me away, but I've not had enough time to think about it. I don't know if you lads have got any other names, but it's just all a lot to take in.
It's no like substantiated reports, but it's like a friend of a friend thing. And it's also because he's worked with Sean Maloney in the past. There's a rumour that I've heard that Sean Maloney could be there till the end of the season, and then depending on how the World Cup goes for Portugal, Roberto Martinez could take over as Celtic manager.
He was in the frame before,
Martinez?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not sure. I mean, I think he failed with one of the best Belgian sides of all time. But I know he's got good stock, good pedigree. Him and Sean Maloney had their relationship at Wigan and then beyond. I don't know. It's an interesting one, Alex. I hadn't heard it, but listen, everything's on the table now. When you see those kind of statements tonight, and the fact that we're rolling back the clock, Ethan, 20 years to Martin O'Neill in the hot seat, anything goes. And kind of almost at this time feels like nothing would surprise you at Celtic. So, yeah, who knows?
Yeah, as well, just an interesting thing about Martin O'Neill that I've seen doing the rounds on Twitter is 8 hours ago, TalkSport posted the clip of him backing Hearts to win the league over Celtic.
That doesn't look good.
I think I know the answer to this. I think I know the answer to this one. Tino, would you welcome Andrew back to Parkhead?
No is the short answer for me. And I loved Andrew and he was brilliant for Celtic, but I think what we do need to learn from all of this is going back to the same guys generally doesn't work well. Now, don't get me wrong, Brendan Rodgers came back and won 2 doubles. So, but the Neil Lennon situation, Celtic seem to have made a bit of a habit out of it. And I actually don't think Andrew would be interested either. He's gone on a different career path. So no, I don't think we should go back down that road. But there was someone else asking in the question, sorry, I missed the name. He was saying, had Celtic fans not already turned against Brendan Rodgers after the Hearts result? Yeah, I think that's there, Mike Bannerman. Quite a lot of fans were against Rodgers before Tynecastle. More got on board after Sunday. I was still hanging on, lads. I don't know about you. I'm a fan of Brendan Rodgers and always have been, and I was kind of hoping he would turn it around, but it's ended in spectacular style. So that's where we are.
Yeah, I think I don't think there was going to be any way of Brendan Rodgers turning it around, unfortunately, for a Celtic point of view, because I think naming some of the candidates we've just went through, I don't think Celtic could have a better manager than Brendan Rodgers at the moment. And I think if you have him really motivated to drive the club forward and give him what he needs, and people debate whether he asks for too much, then I think he's the best Celtic manager Celtic could have at this time. And I think it'll be difficult to find a replacement with the pedigree and the success that he's had. But I would agree with your point, Tino. I think Celtic have too often, when it comes to not only managers but players as well, in recent history, trying to relight past flames, and they need to sort of go down the route of sort of what Hearts are doing. Obviously, they're the example in the Scottish Premiership at the minute of bringing in talent for cheap, not as cheap as maybe Hearts would, because obviously Celtic have got a bigger budget, but bringing in those sort of undiscovered players that can come in and be starting players for Celtic and can compete on a Champions League level. Obviously, I know Celtic aren't at that level at the minute, and that's maybe why I think someone that like Knutson at Bodo Glimt probably wouldn't take on the challenge at Celtic at the minute, because I think he is very well supported there, both financially and backed by the club. Obviously, they're in the Champions League at the moment, so I wouldn't see him jumping ships at the moment. But yeah, the Sean Maloney to take the reins for the remainder of the season, and then Martinez to take charge is a really interesting rumour. But obviously, we're going to get a few of them over the next however long until Celtic appoint a boss.
Just to make clear, if that doesn't come to anything, that's unsubstantiated. But if that does come to anything, I've got all the inside information.
Just a quick point on that, Timo. That's an interesting point you've made, actually, because Celtic's got a habit of going back. They don't go forward in terms of Brendan Rodgers. Okay, if you were a Celtic fan, you were happy to see him back. But it was a backward step. Neil Lennon, a backward step. We all knew what was happening in the COVID season. I think that where the Celtic board might get a better credit for was appointing Postecoglou. And that the point I'm making is Celtic don't kind of like look outside the box in terms of a manager. I mean, nobody's heard of Postecoglou. I mean, for God's sake, Alan Brazil couldn't pronounce his name, and Postecoglou get the last laugh at the end of the season. So, do you think that Celtic should really go forward and not look back in terms of appointing a manager from a concrete on the way up in football. I'm just thinking about Hearts yesterday. I mean, they signed player for the second division in Norway, and I mean, say what you want about Norwegian football, we don't know about it, but it's like, clubs always go to all these countries to appoint a manager like Spain or Italy or whatever. Just look outside the box and, you might get another positive culture.
Yeah, I think whatever Celtic do next, I would hope that it would be something fresh and something creative. The Ange one came about I don't want to dismiss it and say it was just by chance. Obviously, whether it was Mark Lawwell or others, Celtic were aware of Ange, but it came about because Eddie Howe decided at the last minute not to take the job. And as I say, I'd like to see us do something creative, and they can come from anywhere across the globe, Michael, as you say, but as long as they're a forward-thinking, progressive manager, we know at Celtic that you have to play football in a certain way, so it can't be, big physical route one direct football. That doesn't cut it at Celtic. So if someone came in with, good ideas, a nice style of play, but with a decent CV, I mean, I like Sean Maloney. I think Sean Maloney's got talent as a coach, and I was quite interested to see how the project worked out for him at Hibs, for example, but it didn't work out, and the Wigan project didn't work out either. And if you just sit Brendan Rodgers' CV next to Sean Maloney, they don't compare at all. They shouldn't be in the same ballpark. Same as Damien Duff, talented coach. Brendan Rodgers, to your point, Ethan, I think is streets ahead of most other names that are doing the rounds just now. So whether Celtic look at all the obvious names and you'll see them all in the betting odds, or if they'll go from someone out of left field, it's hard to say, but I'd like to see something fresh, something different, and let's not go back to the well of the same type of managers again and see where that takes us.
Got to say good evening to Ian Emerson. He's enjoying the podcast. He says, keep up the good work, guys. Well, subscribe to the Football Zone, Ian, the Scottish Football Zone. I better watch what I'm saying, because Ian's my boss at the famous Catnama magazine. I'm going to give it a wee plug. It's out next week, and it's the 20th edition of the magazine, so get subscribed into the Catnama. But we're here to talk about Brendan Rodgers resigning, and Sean Maloney is coming in. I'm just wondering, Ethan, if Sean Maloney will fit into that Ferrari that Brendan Rodgers was talking about, or do you have to put on a high chair?
I'm not sure. I think Martin O'Neill and Sean Maloney's an interesting appointment, and it may get the players sort of up for it. And I think the players have been playing as a sort of reflection of the manager in a way that it's difficult to explain, but players are usually a reflection of their manager, and I think you've seen that over the last few months with Celtic. They seemed like a team that weren't convinced, they weren't fully committed, and maybe they'll get a new lease of life under a management team which are streets probably behind Brendan Rodgers and modern day tactics.
Martin O'Neill last managed in 2019, and that was at Nottingham Forest.
Yeah,
he didn't last long there either. He was only there.
I'm just like jumping on your point there, Ethan, and sort of going, like what? Not sorry to interrupt you, but what is? It's absolutely mental, and yeah, they probably are not up to sort of the modern day kind of. I mean, Sean Maloney, obviously, he's still a young coach, so he might have some semblance of, obviously, as Tino mentioned, it didn't go well at Hibs, didn't go well at Wigan, so it will be interesting to see what's happening as well. And also, I know this doesn't really come into it with football managers a lot of the time, but also as well on Martin O'Neill, he's 73. Would you want to be coming into this scenario when you're a 73-year-old?
Well, obviously he does, because he's taking the job, but I think that
I think Desmond's just phoned up his mate and gone, "Oh, listen, I need a favour, pal," and he's went, "Oh, all right then," He's
a very youthful 73. He's got a lot of energy, Martin O'Neill, and it's temporary. He actually might give us just a very decent short-term boost. we were talking earlier on tonight. We done our weekly show tonight, and that's all scrapped now. That was useless because obviously the news broke after it. But Celtic were stumbling into Wednesday night and absolutely stumbling into the Rangers game on Sunday. I actually think this gives us a short-term injection of sorts, and the players might respond. And I have to say, I'm excited to see Martin O'Neill on the touchline for Celtic at Hampden against Rangers. I think that's something to behold. So can look forward to that in the meantime.
Right, but because he's 73, I don't think he'll be jumping up and down the same Tino back in the day.
Maybe not.
So thanks for coming on, guys, tonight. It's been a quiet Monday night up until about 10 o'clock tonight. So thanks to Ethan, thanks to Alex, thanks to Tino from the Celtic Exchange podcast. And if you haven't checked out, I would recommend it, because I'm just saying that because Tino's here. No, I'm only kicking. Tino's a brilliant guy. Check them out. And while you're checking them out, check us out as well on the Scottish Football Zone. We've got a YouTube channel. But if you don't want to watch us, you can actually listen to us as a podcast now as well. The podcast will come out tomorrow after, obviously, the show. So we'll be back, hopefully, on Wednesday, looking back at Martin O'Neill's first game. That's a bit weird to say. Martin O'Neill's first game and Sean McGowan's first game as a caretaker manager. And we'll see what happens in this soap opera. It's called Scottish Football.
You're watching the Scottish Football Zone with all the build-up and reactions.